Hello, you're very welcome. My name is Dil Singer, and it's my pleasure to be with you for the next hour as I'm going to talk to you about mental health and wellness in the workplace. So you're very welcome. This is part of the Dublin Pride 2021 official schedule, and we're very proud to be working with Dublin Pride once again. So I'm just going to share my slides. And then we get started. Okay, so share slide. Here we go. And there we are. So there we are. So you should be able to see that, and you should also be able to see me. We hope, and I'm going to just check as we are doing that to make sure that it's all going to plan. Okay, yes, great stuff. So you're very welcome, as I said, to talk around building resilience while working from home, and while also returning to work, because I'm sure many of you are in that place where you're just either have just recently returned to work or are in the process of negotiating this transition of returning to work, which I'm sure is bound to bring up some anxiety, which is absolutely natural, because our lives have changed, literally been turned upside down in the last 16 months. And there was a lot of anxiety at the start of it, with us working remotely and trying to have a million meetings a day on Zoom, and then for obvious reasons, those anxiety levels have kind of stayed with us in the last 16 months. But now I feel the work that we're doing in Inside Matters, which I'll tell you in a little bit, I've seen that anxiety levels kind of rise again because of the transition of maybe returning to work. Now, before we start, perhaps we might come together and just take a mindful minute, just to help us arrive in the moment, so we can really not just arrive, be present to ourselves, and maybe be in a better place to kind of take on the information that I hope to share with you today. Okay, so maybe when you're ready, I invite you, if you're comfortable, to sit back in your chair. Make sure your feet are well grounded on the floor beneath you, and if you are happy enough, I invite you to close your eyes. Now bring your attention inward. Just notice your breath without changing it. Just notice how you're breathing at the moment. Is it slow? Is it fast? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Again, without trying to change it, just become aware of it and try and notice the pattern of breathing as I'm speaking to you. So now maybe you can shift your focus to your feet. How do they feel as they are being supported by the ground beneath you? Just maybe shift your focus to your toes, the ball of your foot, the heel, and just sense into your foot and see how are you feeling presently as you're being supported, as your feet are being supported by the ground beneath you. Then, when you're ready, shift your focus to the points of your body that are in contact with your chair. Maybe the backs of your leg, your lower back. As they feel like to be supported by the chair in this moment. If your thoughts have carried you away, without judgment, come back and bring your attention back to your breath. And it's very comforting to always remember, no matter what's happening in your life, no matter how busy or hectic things might be, your body breathes for you. You don't have to remind it. It's not a conscious process. Your body breathes for you. There's comfort to be found in that, no matter what's happening. that your body is supporting you through by breathing in and out without having to think about it, without any effort on your part. So I'm going to ring my meditation bell 3 times. If you can, to the best of your ability, stay with the sound of these bells. And here we go. Just take a couple of deep breaths. Breathe in peace. Breathe out any agitation. Breathe in love. Breathe out any worries. And breathe in pride. And breathe out any negativity. And when you're ready, you might bring your attention back into the room. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, and open your eyes. So there we are. A mindful minute or so to help us arrive in the moment. And mindfulness is a wonderful resource that can be with you at any time. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes sitting in a lotus position, listening to Plinky Plonky music. It can just be that. Just 1 minute, 2 minutes is sometimes all you need to really just bring your attention back to yourself and ground yourself. So that will help you equip yourself to better manage, better navigate what you're facing through the day. So a little bit about myself before I continue. My name is Mihindi Kulasurya Nansilea Dilhani Vikram Singh. That's not my address. That's not my life story. That's my actual name. And Dil comes from my first full name, Dilhani. And usually the first question people ask me is, where are you from? So I was born and brought up in Italy. My parents are Sri Lankan. I lived in the Middle East working as a flight attendant. And I'm now in Ireland for 21 years. Like many LGBTQI plus people, I was forced to emigrate from a very religious society. My parents themselves were very religious. They were Jehovah's Witnesses. And when I came out to them at the age of 16, they sadly threw me out. So I was homeless for a number of years and managed to get myself back on my feet and really just get on with it. And now looking back, it's funny. I often think that's one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it kind of got me out of away from that religious environment, a very homophobic environment, and then led me to arrive in Ireland. And the day I arrived in Ireland was June 2000. It was the 28th, I think, of June 2000. Within 24 hours of me arriving in Dublin and my feet touching Irish soil, I found myself marching down O'Connell Street in broad daylight singing "It's Raining Men." It happened to coincide with Dublin Gay Pride. So that was 21 years ago. And from the very moment I got here, I felt, to be surrounded by my wonderful community, to attend my first Dublin Pride, my first Pride, was absolutely pivotal for me. I mean, it was a seminal moment, and I felt that I'd come home in many ways, and I was right, because I'm very much, Ireland is very much my home. So like many migrants, I started working in hospitality as a kitchen porter. I then worked as a senior recruitment consultant for a number of years. So that's why my I suppose my expertise around human resources and workplace initiatives comes from. And then I worked as a journalist, and then more recently, I am now training to be a psychotherapist. I set up Insight Matters, which is a mental health support service, which really came about by the fact that when Anne-Marie and I met just a little over 11 years ago, we both had the same experience of when we were looking for mental health resources or mental health services. When we had our respective mental health issues in 2006, we didn't know each other back then, but we both had mental health issues around the same time. For me, because of the trauma of having to emigrate, also the rejection I experienced from my family, and also just the homophobia and discrimination and racism that I've experienced in my life. That led me to have mental health issues, and it took me a while to find mental health support services that were accessible, but also that were inclusive of the diversity that I would bring into the room. And Anne-Marie, when I met her 4 years later in 2010, she had the exact same experience. Now she grew up in Meath, and she herself found, when she was looking for mental health support services, she couldn't find LGBTQI plus affirming mental health support services. So she was training as a psychotherapist when I met her. So that's when we decided, let's set up a practice. And genuinely, when we set Inside Matters up, we didn't realize there would be such a need. But I think we had a sense that there was definitely a demand, but never in a million years would we think that the demand would have led us to be here today. So Anne-Marie was our first psychotherapist, and now, just a decade after we set up Inside Matters, we now have just over 100 therapists working with us. We have wellness practitioners as well, and together we have the privilege to support the mental health and wellness of over 600 clients weekly, nationally and internationally. That's, I suppose, one thing that's come out of the last 16 months. People are more open to accessing mental health support services and wellness support services online, and therefore we've been able to now provide our services outside of Ireland. And one thing that I've had on my bucket list for the longest time has been to be able to support our LGBTQI plus community in Sri Lanka, where homosexuality is yet to be decriminalized. So I'm very pleased to say that we have just started the wheels in motion to make that happen. Because unfortunately in Sri Lanka, if a member of our queer community was to go to a psychotherapist because they were experiencing depression or anxiety, they would be told that it's because of their sexuality or their gender identity that they were experiencing mental health issues, not because of the incredibly homophobic, biphobic, interphobic, and transphobic toxic environment that they were living in. So that's who we are. We're based in Cable Street, and we're right next to Outhouse, and we have a full building now of 15 rooms. And this is my family. As we stand outside the front doors of our center, there's Anne-Marie, and there's our son Phoenix, who's 6 years old, and there's our daughter Xavier, who is just 3, and she'll be turning 4 in August. And I'm very proud of this photograph. But one of the reasons I show this photograph, especially in relation to wellness in the workplace, is because EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion initiatives have really come to the forefront, I feel, in the last 16 months, because with people working remotely, workplaces have had to be more inclusive of employees, more so than ever before, but not just of the employee themselves, but also their families and their communities. So we know that there's enough evidence that shows if we can be our true selves in the workplace, then we can bring all of ourselves and all of our talents and all of our creativity to the workplace. So that's us. Now moving on to the I suppose the nitty-gritty of our conversation here today, as part of the Dublin Pride 2021 festival around mental health and wellness in the workplace, whether you're working remotely or whether you're working back in the office, or you're in the process of, maybe you have a blended schedule where you're maybe working a couple of days at home and then a couple of days in the office. This talk is very much geared towards giving you some practical tips, some really practical information that you can take away with you to help you make some immediate changes in relation to how you live your life, to really improve and enhance your wellness and just a feeling of well-being. So the race of life is a marathon, not a sprint. And this is a saying that I've actually been saying a lot in the last 16 months, because especially with the current situation in COVID, and restrictions thankfully being lifted, we really didn't know 16 months ago what the future was going to look like, especially when it came to working. So and just in relation to us living our lives in this new, as people are saying, the new normal, so to speak. But we have to really kind of approach this as not a race. It's not a sprint. It's definitely a marathon. So you really need to resource yourself. Make sure you become aware of your physical and mental and emotional state, so you can then, when you're feeling depleted, do something about it. Because if you don't, you're going to definitely, your overall health is going to suffer. I've heard so many people during the last 16 months say, oh, I'll look after my health, I'll look after my mental health once all this is over. But the reality is we really don't know when all this is going to be over. So it's really important to start today and take a proactive approach towards your physical, mental, and emotional well-being, as opposed to kind of putting it on the long finger. Because the more you are supposed to kick the can down the road, the bigger the issue can be. Whereas if you deal with it today from a proactive approach, taking a more preventative approach, chances are you could avoid yourself a lot of pain and just a lot of discomfort. So working from home or living at work, this is something that somebody said to me at the very start of, I think, the first lockdown, when many of us began working from home. Are we working from home? Or are we living at work? And the reality is, a lot of us, that balance. Anyway, before all this started, there's, we have become aware that work-life balance is key, and not just in relation to the quality of the work that we do, but also to the quality of life that we have. So a good work-life balance is integral to your well-being, and also, as I said, from a productivity point of view. But we had boundaries then. We had, physical boundaries that made us, leave work behind us, physically at least. Sometimes work would still be with us on our phones or on our laptops. But the reality is, we physically left the office or our workplace to go home. And now suddenly that physical boundary literally overnight disappeared, and we were working and living and caring for our children and cooking and doing everything that we do in our lives, all in one place. And my heart would particularly go to individuals who are maybe living in sharing accommodations, where perhaps your bedroom is the only space in your home that you share with other housemates or flatmates, and your bedroom is also your office. And this is incredibly problematic, because where is that physical boundary that I was talking about earlier? There is none. So there's things that you need to do, and I hope you have done in the last few months. But at least even now, there's still plenty of opportunity to do that, because I really do feel this partly working remotely is still very much now part of how we work. I think the way we work has changed drastically in the last year, and many organizations will really retain many aspects of working remotely. So if you're working remotely, you need to ensure that you still have some boundaries, because otherwise you won't know where your free time is, where your personal time is, and where your work time is. So if you are in a situation where your office is in your bedroom, there's things that you can do to actually physically put work out of your mind. Closing the laptop might not be enough, because your desk is still there. So getting a screen of sorts, or even putting a throw over the desk, or even having one of those desks that can open and close. That at least then, when your desk is closed, you're done for the day. So it's just being creative about how you can create those boundaries for yourselves when you're working from home. And it's really interesting, because I remember back in 2006, when I became self-employed, I attended a course with the Dublin Enterprise Board, and they gave us a lot of tips around, many people, when they become self-employed, they usually start working from home, because renting offices and so forth can be a bit expensive at the start. And I did that. I started working in my front office, or in my home office, and one of the tips that still has stayed with me today, like there's days I work in the center, there's days I work at home, is that get dressed in the morning as if you're going to work. especially at the start, if you're still kind of learning to create these boundaries for yourself. When you wake up in the day, get dressed as if you're going to work, maybe go for a walk around the block, and then when you come back into your home, go straight to your desk. Don't stop anywhere along the way. So you have kind of created that physical boundary that you are now in the workplace. And also shoes. Well, many of us would be tempted to wear our house slippers, so to speak, but instead of those, wear your work shoes, because that even how your feet feel in your shoes will kind of make your frame of mind be in the workplace and not at home. And that's why changing clothes from loungewear to your office clothes is also a good idea, even though many of us are wearing elasticated pants these days with the rolling lockdowns that we've had. I know I'm speaking for myself, but I know some of the pants that I used to wear to go to the office are not fitting as well. Okay, so these are a lot of tips that I've already kind of discussed in relation to creating structure in your day. Make sure that you create a timetable for yourself in relation to your work times, and then make sure you don't eat at your table. Maybe again, go for a walk, go to your local park, have your lunch there. Schedule regular breaks. Just be mindful of your own well-being during your working times as well. Because sometimes you might think, oh, I'm at work, so my well-being is okay. But again, that doesn't quite work that way. You have to actively nourish yourself and be aware if you are depleted, that you need to kind of look after yourself. Like at the moment, I know I'm extremely depleted because I have got the worst attack of hay fever in years, and I don't know if there's any fellow hay fever sufferers there, because if you are, I'm stand with you in solidarity, because it's been a particularly challenging week for me with streaming and itchy eyes and running noses and whatnot. So posture, sitting down, I think a lot of the companies have been quite proactive in this way, that they actually provided chairs to people who are working from home. But if that's not the facility that has been offered to you, invest in a good chair for yourself, because sitting on the bed working on your laptop is not a very, very good solution. If you're going to be working, you want 1, 2, 2 or 3 or for the full week at home. So have a proper work desk area, and have a chair or even an exercise ball is excellent, because posture is integral in relation to your well-being, but also just it really supports your body to be able to do, to function well. If you hold yourself well, your shoulders are back and you're keeping your back straight, that in itself will make a big difference in your own overall well-being. Then in relation to kind of taking a bird's eye view of just your life in general, because the work really, when we talk about wellness in the workplace, a lot of it is really connected to becoming self-aware, just being aware of yourself, but also being aware of your life, and taking a 360 view of your life in relation to how happy you are, how satisfied you are in your life. So the Wheel of Life is a great little exercise. It's a coaching kind of personal development exercise that can be done on over time, periodically, just so you can get a bird's eye view of just how life is going for you at the moment. So it's a wheel. You can draw it yourself, or you can print it off the net. There's lots of wheels, the Wheel of Life examples on the net, and each pie, I always think of Trivial Pursuit, each pie represents a different aspect of your life, and then you're basically meant to kind of score yourself from 0 to 10 in relation to how content you are in that aspect of your life. So this Wheel of Life has a number of segments. You have finances, family and friends, intimate relationships, physical health and body, what do we have? Spiritual health, emotional health, career, mission, and contribution to society, fun and excitement, and consistent growth. So it's a really good overview of what your life is made up of, and then you meant to kind of score yourself, as I said, in relation to each aspect of your life. How happy are you? And once you score yourself, you're meant to join the dots, and ideally you're supposed to get a perfect circle within the circle. In other words, you kind of have to be content in all parts of your life around the same. And I think that might be a little bit difficult. I think I know I don't think it's quite possible to have that, but great if you do. But basically, don't give yourself a hard time if you don't, because most people, when they do this exercise for the first time, the line tends to be quite wobbly. It will go around, but it's not quite of a circle within a circle. And once you kind of get that bird's eye view of your life and kind of what are the areas that you're happy in and what are the areas that you're not, then you can actually brainstorm some ideas of how you can actually increase your satisfaction in the areas that you're not so kind of content in, and that can be quite easily done. So once you brainstorm these ideas might not immediately yield benefits, but at least it can set you on the path of kind of recorrecting the balance in your life and creating that kind of perfect circle within the circle, at least as close to a perfect circle. I hope that makes sense, because what will happen if you don't do these types of exercises, you kind of tend to kind of just keep going, and then you get to a point where suddenly the whole thing everything just falls apart, and then you realize maybe your work-life balance was way off, and even though you were very happy in your work, and quite content in your finances, but from a personal perspective, in maybe your intimate relationships, or maybe your fun and excitement and recreation, or maybe your physical health or spiritual health or emotional health all kind of suffered because you focused all your energy into maybe one or two segments of your life, and that can, as you can imagine, can bring up quite a lot of problems. So at least if you're aware of it, you can kind of correct that balance and make sure that you don't have any surprises down the road. So that's the wheel of life. Part of becoming self-aware is becoming aware of your stress. Now, stress is a huge part of our life, and it's really important to understand that stress is not, it's a natural body's reaction to any change that requires an adjustment or response. So this can be negative or positive. So whenever there's a change in our environment and our body has to respond to it, that's when we feel stressed. And this can be positive change or negative change. So, for example, positive life changes such as a promotion, or getting a mortgage, or the birth of a child. These are all positive kind of experiences. Getting married could be another one as well, but also these do require a response from us, and therefore can cause stress. So often when you think of stress, we only think about negative kind of events in life. So the sources of stress, there's many. So we have, from an environmental point of view, we have the news, traffic, pollution, pollens. I have pollens there for a reason. Weather as well. So news, it can have such an influence on our mood. And if you consume a lot of media constantly, and you're bombarded by not so good news all the time, you're going to have your stress levels increase. Your mood is going to dip. So, becoming aware of that, and maybe knowing the days that you're feeling a little bit more vulnerable, that maybe you can pull back on reading news. And then other sources of stress would be, physiologically speaking, not having a kind of a good, healthy lifestyle. If you don't exercise regularly, have poor nutrition, lack of sleep, that can bring about illness, and then also aging. All of that all the kind of physical aspects can also bring about stress. And if you don't look after yourself from a physical health point of view, you're only going to cause yourself more stress. Then you have social stresses like job related stress, deadlines, finances, also conflicts, loss of loved ones. These can all be stressors. And then your own thoughts and your interpretations and labels and predictions can also cause stress. I always bring that in because we can't necessarily really control a lot of things, like from an environmental point of view, the loss of a loved one, or deadlines and job related stress. But there's a lot of things that we can control in relation to our thoughts, our interpretations. Comparing ourselves to somebody else, thinking, oh gosh, there's someone who's my age and they've got this, whereas I, on the other hand, I don't have anything compared to what they have. So just comparing yourself to somebody else, that in itself can bring about stress, and really not really helpful, not really productive. Whereas the wheel of life kind of exercise, it kind of gives you more of a bird's eye view of your own life. You're not comparing it to nobody else, but you're not shaming yourself. You're not kind of giving out yourself, and that can also be inner critic. We all have one. I always joke that mine sounds like my mother. Our inner critic can always, sometimes when they're speaking very loudly, can cause stress. And that's, these are the things that we can be more mindful, that are internal sources of stress, that we can maybe manage a bit better, and, practice compassion, self-compassion towards ourselves. So signs of stress, these are just some symptoms, so being irritable, aggressive, impatient, wound up, or feeling anxious, nervous, or afraid, unable to enjoy yourself. That's a very big one. Not feeling joy, not feeling enjoyment out of life is a massive symptom of stress. Depression. These are all a byproduct of stress. A sense of dread, worried about your own health, feeling neglected or lonely, and feeling uninterested in life. These are all, depending on how stressed you are and for how long, these are the kind of symptoms that you'd have. So, and the reality is we will all experience a level of stress in our life, but it's just for how long, because our bodies are not made to experience extended periods of stress. And we've seen this in the last 16 months, because you can see how many people, I felt it hugely over the last year, even just walking down the street, or going to a shop or a supermarket to get some food, you could sense the stress and anxiety that other people were experiencing, and I think also because I'm doing this course, I'm in my, I just finished my third year, I become even more aware of not just myself but my surroundings. So stress has been a huge issue in the last year. So you need to really be, when you're stressed, what are you doing to replenish yourself? What are you doing to kind of bring down those stress levels? So these are the things that, once you become aware that you're stressed, you can do something about it. But unfortunately, and I'm speaking for myself, there were years when I was working in recruitment, way before I went down the route of becoming more self-aware and accessing therapy, or just becoming more aware of the importance of personal development. I would have been stressed for years and not even been aware of it. I would have been walking around with my shoulders, like I was wearing my shoulders like earrings, and not being aware that I was stressed. But people around me would be like, "Dude, you seem really stressed." I'm like, "I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. What makes you think that I'm stressed?" So at least when you're aware of that you're stressed, you recognize the signs that you're stressed, you can actually do something about it. We can't always control what happens, but we can control our response, and that's one thing we have certainly learned in the last year, is that we really have very little control of our environment, but what we can control is how we respond to it. And this has been hugely beneficial to my own mental health, because I realized that there's just, I became very aware of the boundary between me and the world. What are the things that I can do, and what are the things that I can't do. But being aware of what I can't do can really has really stopped me from throwing energy in a direction that really wouldn't be of any benefit. So you can control how you respond, and this is a piece of information that I learned within the first year of starting my course in DBS, and I can't stress how important this piece of information is. I mean, it has been completely life-changing for me, and it has made me become so aware of, just in relation to how we are living our lives, and how just this, how being aware of this, what I'm going to talk to you about, is really going to improve the quality of life of your life. And hopefully maybe you might be able to share this information with your loved ones and friends, that it'll enable them to improve their quality of life. So stress, this is all kind of connected to stress, but it's connected to a portion of our brain called the amygdala, which is in the very middle. It's a small part of the brain, and its whole purpose in life is to monitor our environment to see whether we are safe or not. Now, interestingly, the amygdala has not changed much between us and prehistoric people. It's exactly the same. Its function is exactly the same. Its job is to keep us safe, and it's, as I said, constantly monitoring our environment to see if there's anything that we need that is dangerous or not. You know, and it's in communication with our nervous system, in particular, what is known as our autonomic nervous system. So, as I said, the amygdala is constantly scanning the environment to see whether we are safe or not, and depending on whether we are safe or not, it's communicating with our autonomic nervous system to know whether we are safe or not. And depending on whether we are safe or not, there's a whole string of physiological reactions that happen. So the autonomic nervous system is split into two. Okay, so we have the parasympathetic system, which is known as the relaxation response, and then we have the sympathetic system, known as the stress response. So these two systems, the relaxation and the stress response, are working in combination to maintain balance. Okay, it's known as homeostasis. When everything is well, you're calm, the two are, perfectly balanced, and everything, all your bodily functions are going about their business, right? Now, this can all change like that depending on what is happening in your environment. Okay, so if your amygdala perceives a threat, it'll send information to your stress response to activate. So I'll give you an example. You're strolling down a lovely street on a lovely day like today, in the sunshine, and you kind of lost in your thoughts. You're like looking at birds, trees. It's such a lovely day. Then you see a car come around the corner quite fast and lose control, and next it literally comes up on the curb, and it's heading in your direction. The moment the amygdala sees this, it sends instant messages to your stress response to activate, because if you don't, you're going to get run over by a car, right? So what's going to happen? Your pupils are going to dilate, your saliva is going to stop production, your lungs are going to relax, so they're going to be able to take on more oxygen. Your heartbeat is going to accelerate. Your digestion, if you're digesting your breakfast roll, that's going to get cut off, right? Because all blood flow will be directed to all your major muscles, because you will have to mobilize into action. And we know when a person is in this state, in the stress response state, there's enough evidence that shows people have run faster, jumped over walls, moved cars to try and save their loved ones. So you become superhuman, because literally it's concentrated. All your energy, all your strength is being kind of brought up, to save your life, and this is the exact same reaction that people in prehistoric times would have had if they had been, faced with a woolly mammoth or a saber-toothed tiger, so exactly the same. Now, interestingly enough, whether it's a car coming towards you, or whether it's an email from an irate customer, or that presentation that you were meant to be giving that has been pushed forward, you will still perceive that as a threat. It might not be a life or death situation, but your brain will perceive a threat, and you will have the same physiological reactions that you would normally have in a life or death situation. So can you see the strength and the intensity of that reaction, of your stress response, which, as I said, would save your life in a life or death situation? But what happens to that energy when you get that email, or when you lose your phone and you're in your workplace type setting, So it's really important that when you go through this process of becoming more self-aware, you become aware of your actual physical state, and you become able to recognize when your stress response has been activated. So then, if that, say, for example, if you are walking down the street and your stress response has been activated, you're going to recognize that and you're going to go with it because you need it in that situation. But if your stress response has been activated because of that email, for example, then you'll know, okay, that this is not a life or death situation. I don't need to be distressed. So hang on, let's chill here. So you can send messages to your relaxation response to activate and then bring back that balance, So because with the stress response going up there, the relaxation response kind of takes a back seat. So when to kind of bring down the stress response, you need to activate your relaxation response and bring back that calmness, So how can you do that? Very simple. It's with using your breath, actually. Your breath is your superpower that's with you at all times, and taking 15 deep breaths can reinstate homeostasis and bring down your stress response. Now, the reason why this slide is there is to show you that, first of all, there's the amygdala there, but also when you're in a state of stress, you can't make any rational decisions. So if you got that email, or if your manager just walked into your office and asked you a question and kind of put you on the spot, and your stress response has been activated because you feel under attack and you feel stress, you really can't give a coherent, well thought out response. So it's really important to say, can you give me a minute on that? I just need to check something before I come back to you. Then you go away, do your deep breath, and then you come back, and then you're able to have a proper conversation, because you're going to be, there's going to be balance restored, and the rational part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, will be functioning again. So these are really important bits of information that can really improve not just your overall quality of life, but also help how you relate with your work colleagues. So what are your stress triggers? This is a time where you can actually maybe jot these down, because at least if you're aware of the stress triggers, then you can know what you can do around those to kind of minimize the damage that this will cause you. Because there's some stresses that we really can't do anything about, like, from a work type point of view, presentations, board meetings, interviews for a promotion. These are all stress triggers for most of us. But there's things that you can do before and after the event to nurture yourself, to prepare yourself, and then after the event, what can you do to replenish? Because when you do these things that usually cause you stress, your body is going to feel depleted. It's going to have a cost on your overall well-being. So what can you do on the other side of it to replenish yourself? You want to be in the driver's seat of your own life, because if you're not, life will drive you. The reason why I bring this up is because, especially in the last years, I've become aware of the unconscious. And Freud would be known to have popularized the concept of the unconscious. So if Freud believed that if you were an iceberg, our conscious mind was only that tiny piece that was peeking over the water, where the majority of ourselves is actually our unconscious mind, and it's lying beneath the water. We're not even aware of it, So becoming, this whole self-awareness piece has so many benefits, not just in relation to your own self and your own wellness, but it can also help from an unconscious bias point of view, because the more you go on that inward journey, the more you become aware of your own prejudices and your own unconscious bias, so you can try and work on those. So that's what I'm saying. In relation to the unconscious mind, many of us would believe, yeah, I'm in the driver's seat of my life. I'm the captain of my ship. But Freud and many other people who came after him in the field of psychology and psychotherapy would believe, actually, you're not. It's the unconscious mind that's really in charge. It's the skeletons underneath the ship that are really steering the ship. So when you become more aware of yourself by going inward and learning more about yourself, you start unearthing these messages that maybe you have internalized, that have been kind of pushing you in a direction that maybe is not really the right direction for you. I mean, we see this a lot in our own center in Inside Matters. So many people come to us with mental health issues who maybe were on, for example, in a career that they thought was the right career for them, because they thought it was a sensible career. It was a career that, was maybe recommended to them by their family or by just generally society. And then at some point they realize that they're unhappy, and it's only through that process of coming into therapy that they realize actually this is not what they wanted to do with their life at all. They actually wanted to do something completely different, but it wasn't their it wasn't in their conscious, that information was driving them in the direction of that job or that romantic partner, or whatever direction your life is in, because of these maybe unconscious messages that we have had. And becoming aware of those unconscious messages then makes you helps you take more charge of your life and the direction that you're going in. So don't be a victim of negative self-talk. Remember, you're always listening, so be very conscious of what you say, because sometimes we say the unkindest things about ourselves that we would never in a million years say to a friend. So if you ever make a mistake or you do something that you're not quite proud of, just think about it in a situation that what if your friend had done that? Would you be as hard on them as you are on yourself? So it's really be mindful of your self-talk. Setting healthy boundaries. We've talked about boundaries from a workplace type point of view, but there's also boundaries, emotional boundaries, when we talk about how we relate with people. The best way to describe boundaries for me is, imagine you're a house, you have a front garden, and then you have a fence. So that fence is your boundary. This is the point where you end and where the world begins. So this is a really good visual for you to kind of be more aware of your boundaries. And this fence, it doesn't necessarily have to be very rigid. It can be flexible, but at least you're aware of where it is. Because when you're aware of where it is, then you will be aware when people overstep their boundary and try and take advantage of you. So people will just jump over your fence, do a little tap dance on your front lawn, and if you're not aware where your fence is, you're not aware that person has violated your boundaries. So when you're aware of those boundaries, when you're navigating this life, you are then able to kind of, when you're relating with people, you kind of have a better understanding of where are you and where is the world. So if something happens, that this is not about you. This is actually about that person. If you have healthy boundaries, you will be able to identify when someone says something to you, and you realize actually this is nothing about you at all. It could be completely about that person because of that. You're aware of the boundary. Because otherwise, sometimes someone might say something, you might take it personally, and then it becomes a big mess because maybe you weren't aware that there was a boundary there, that maybe that person had kind of popped over, And one great way of reasserting your boundaries in relation to the world around you is using this little word that some of us really struggle to use: no. And I think culturally speaking, in Ireland, it's not a word that many people like to kind of say, because it almost sounds abrupt. You always feel that you have to say, you kind of look, I can't do that, but I can do this for you. So, and that's okay, to kind of say you can't do something, but then also provide an alternative. But it's just being able to assert your boundaries when people kind of ask you something. Sometimes they're chancing their arm, and if you don't have a good sense of your boundaries, you will just end up saying yes to everything, and then what will happen? You'll end up burning out. So it's really important. The boundaries are there to protect you primarily, and then also it helps people in your life know where they stand as well. And then there's a clarity, when you know your boundaries, other people know your boundaries, their boundaries, and everyone there's a lot of clarity around how you can relate with each other. Because often issues around relating kind of happens when boundaries have not been either respected or have not been asserted. You wouldn't let this happen to your phone, yet you let this happen to you. So when the battery is low on your phone, what normally happens? You look for your charger, you look for your closest plug point, you're like, okay, I need to charge my phone. And yet many of us will run on low battery for weeks, months, even years. Self-care is a priority and not a luxury. Fit your oxygen mask first on yourself before you put it on anybody else. I used to be a flight attendant for 5 years, and I used to make the safety announcement at least 5 times a day. And I used to always marvel, if you're a parent, surely you're going to put the oxygen mask first on your child. Great, then you'll pass out straight after, and then the plane crashes and your child survives, you won't be there to actually carry them into safety. So putting the oxygen mask first on yourself not only helps you maintain your own self-care and look after yourself, but it also helps you support the people who are depending on you. So whether it's your loved ones, whether it's your family, whether it's your work colleagues, fitting the oxygen mask first on yourself can actually be, it can have a ripple effect, because it not only look after you, but it kind of helps all the people who are kind of, I suppose, depending on you as well. So in relation to self-care, there's many, there's the progressive muscular relaxation, which is a great technique, which is like, for those of you who maybe find mindfulness not very helpful, because stilling your mind takes a lot of practice. And there's a reason also why many of us are not meant to be doing mindfulness. If you've experienced trauma, you're better off not doing mindfulness for a while until you actually address the trauma. But this type of meditation, which is called progressive muscle relaxation, is about tightening your muscles and then kind of releasing them. When you do that, immediately you release the tension. Like shoulders would be the perfect example, where a lot of us kind of hold our tension. So there's loads of resources on the net around kind of guided progressive muscle relaxation, where you can start with your toes, your ankle, your knees, and work your way up. And it's really quite amazing when you do it, because you actually forget what a relaxed muscle feels like. Because when you kind of build up that tension and then let go, you kind of discharge some of that tension that you have been holding for a while. And of course, for those of you who like mindfulness, that's always a great resource as well. And there is wonderful resources out there, but also please do consider therapy, because therapy, provided by a accredited mental health professional, can be hugely beneficial in relation to helping that kickstart that inner journey, that inward journey, where you become more self-aware. And then not only that, if there is genuinely, trauma in the past, if there's stuff that has happened to you in the past that you never got a chance to unpack, process, and understand, therapy can be a wonderful place for you to actually do that. Many of us have experienced, whether it's trauma, whether it's loss of loved ones, injustices, especially members of the LGBTQI plus community. We have experienced so much discrimination, so much homophobia, biphobia, interphobia, transphobia. All of that stuff is trapped in our bodies, and it's not going to go anywhere unless you actually make a concerted effort to actually view it. So Insight Matters is there, but also there's many other services that you can contact. But make sure, if you're a member of the community, make sure the service is an LGBTQI plus affirming service, because the last thing you need to do when you're going into therapy is to feel that you have to explain yourself, or you have to educate the therapist, or worse, feel that they're they're not only aware, but they're perhaps saying things that can be incredibly prejudiced towards you. Unfortunately, Ireland, we still have, we don't have a full ban on reparative or conversion therapy. I know the ISCP, which is one of the largest counseling accreditation bodies, has taken a very strong stance against it, but there isn't an actual national ban, and unfortunately that is still happening. So the last thing you want is, when you're looking for a mental health psychotherapist, so that you find a therapist who's actually thinking that your identity and your sexual identity is the issue. But it's not. As the saying goes, being gay does not, or being trans does not bring about mental health issues. Homophobia does. Transphobia brings about mental health issues. I was always looking outside myself for strength and confidence, but it comes from within. It is there all the time. So, the last 16 months have been incredibly challenging for most of us, including myself. There have been days where I have personally despaired. And it's really important to know that, of course, you must reach for support. That's really, really important. But don't forget that you have incredible strength within you. But to access that strength within you, you have to look inwards, and that's why, why I've said a number of times, go on that inward journey, become more self-aware, because when you do that, you'll actually unlock incredible source of strength that's within you all the time. You just have to look for it, and you can do that with the support of practitioners out there. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence actually liberates others. Loving yourself is the greatest revolution. If you can take the time to not just give yourself, truckloads of self-care, especially in the light of what we've been through together collectively, but also give yourself love. Loving yourself is the greatest revolution, because if you do that, you will unlock this ability to have empathy for others, because most of us are not able to experience empathy because we are in a place of where we are on our knees, where we are hanging by our fingernails. And when you do that, you can't recognize when a friend of yours or a loved one is not well. And there's going to be a lot more people who are going to be, from a mental health point of view, unwell in the coming months, because it's just going to be a knock-on effect of what we've gone through the last 16 months. So instead of kind of putting the burden on other people to come out to you and say, look, I'm struggling, I need your help, why not start this process from within? Make self-care, self-nourishment a priority, and then be open about it. Say like that you're really taking time to look after yourself. And when you're talking to someone and you're saying, how are you, say, look, I've struggled the last few months, how are you doing? And that gives that person permission to be open about their state as well. Because there's research in the last week that's come out, young LGBTQ people, their mental health is in bits because of the restrictions, not being able to meet each other, but also their sense of hope for the future has been impacted because of what has happened. And then also young people between 16 and 35, there's a report that was put out by Spun Out. It's called Deflection Nation, because we are, people are saying, how are you? And the stock answer is, I'm grand. So if you say I'm grand, nobody can help you. So there is a little bit of work on both sides, the person who's struggling, the person who's who maybe not struggling at the moment, to kind of create an environment where your friends and family members can feel that they can come to you if you struggle. It's like, coming out, who you can come, when you're going through the process of coming out, who you can go to come out and who you don't, so like that, be a person where people can feel that they can gravitate towards you because they know that you get it. That you yourself have been through your own struggles. You yourself are making your mental health and your wellness very much part of your day-to-day routine. Therefore, they're going to feel more comfortable to talk to you about it, because then they'll know they're going to get a really positive and nurturing response from you. So there's really something that we can all do collectively, irrespective of whether you are wherever you are on the continuum of mental health and wellness. So that's me done. I'm just going to stop sharing. The one thing about when you're sharing this, there you are. When you're sharing the screen, I can't see that many activities. So if you have any questions, you're most welcome to throw those questions at me now, or you can also always contact us on info@insidematters.ie. And remember, guys, this looking after your mental health and looking after your well-being is incredibly powerful. It can help you, and it can help, you're setting an example also for the people around you. So if they can almost notice, like if I've seen so many people, especially in the last few months, almost so frustrated around the people in their life who are not maybe looking after themselves as much as they could be, maybe their partners or their parents or their children or their work colleagues, but we really can't force other people to make changes to look after themselves better. But what we can do is look after ourselves, resource ourselves, and hopefully the people around us will see how much how transformative it is when we look after our own mental health and our own wellness, and how that really can play a huge part in just having a better quality of life. Then we have got a message from Louise. Thank you so much. That was an excellent and very helpful. Louise, thank you very much for joining us. Please do share this recording, because once I stop the broadcast, it will be available on the Dublin Pride YouTube page and the Facebook page, so you can share it for anyone who you feel might get something out of it, you know. So thank you very much for joining us here today. This is our last talk. We've had 4 talks in this month as part of the Dublin Pride Festival. The first talk was a discussion around the mental health of our LGBTQI plus community. We had some amazing speakers. We had Noah Halpin from TENI, Transgender Equality Network of Ireland. We had Renee von Medding, the CEO of Equality for Children. And then we also had Coletta Regan from LGBT Ireland. And so they really gave us, and also Pat Timlin, who is one of our psychotherapists in Inside Matters, who is just a wonderful, gifted therapist. And so between the 5 of us, we had a discussion of what does the mental health of our queer community look like. You know, it wasn't the best before, but it's certainly in kind of, it's in bits at the moment, you know. So so we kind of got the message loud and clear. So we really, if you're a member of the community, you really have to put your mental health, you know, at the forefront, at the top of the list. And then we had a talk on you know, just self-care in relation to your own mental health. And then obviously today's talk was about mental health in the workplace. And then we had a wonderful talk last week with Aoife Ryan, who is a parent and relationship mentor. She's a fantastic relationship and parent mentor in Inside Matters, and she gave us a real insight into parenting. Because many of us have been parented very differently, you know. So so we, you know, when you know better, we do better. So all these talks are there on the YouTube page. And if this is Dilbert Kumsinger from Inside Matters, if you need to get in touch, please do email us on info@insidematters.ie. We have 100 therapists working with us. We provide online and face-to-face services, counseling, psychotherapy, and also we have a whole range of wellness services as well, chiropractic, homeopathy, and massage as well. I go to my therapist in Inside Matters for my own self-care. It's brilliant. It's been a life changer for me. So a huge thank you for those of you who commented. Chris says excellent presentation. Thank you, Chris. And Stephen, who found it very interesting. So have a lovely day. Look, the sun is shining. Get out there, enjoy the day, and happy Pride. And here's to 2022 Pride, which is going to be spectacular, because you'll have 2 Prides to make up for. All right. Thanks very much. Take care, and happy Pride.